Hello, my name is Hussein Askari. I'm a member of the International لاروش movement and Shiller Institute. I work in Sweden for our organization. How much time do I have? Okay, we have an announcement. Lunch is canceled. All right, somebody should close the doors too. Anyway, my presentation intersects a lot of what Helga presented, so we're going to skip some of it or go quickly. All right. Just one note, because what I'm going to present is the other side of the coin of what we have today in the region, Southwest Asia. We have wars and so on. But what I'm going to present is that this is going to be done by the same nations who are involved in war acts or defending themselves against war. So all these nations are nation states. And in a just world economic order and political order, all these nations will have to contribute to this development. So it doesn't matter if it's Saudi Arabia, Iran, Qatar, all these nations are considered nation states, and they should be sovereign. But the policy has to change. The other thing is that many of the projects which I'm going to present, what Helga presented, many of them are already being built. Some of them are finished. The problem is that these are local projects, and they don't have, they lack the global planetary dimension and perspective. So this is what we're going to add through our plan to this, that this is a planetary mission. So anyway, I've been working with the question of Southwest Asia many years as a member of the organization, and there's a recurring problem the whole time I meet and talking to both citizens but also political leaders from Southwest Asia. Say, how can you present an economic program at the time when we are being shot at? We have war. So how can you talk about economic development and projects in the middle of a war? The problem is that there are lots of excuses. The reason is that these nations did not do what they were told or they were supposed to do before they were getting shot at. Missed many years since Lyndon LaRouche was in Baghdad in 1974. We lost a lot of time. The other thing is that some people say we don't have money. And as soon as they finish talking to you, they go around the corner and they go buy weapons for hundreds of billions of dollars because they say we are in a war situation. But anyway, there's another excuse which is difficult to deal with, and it's true because they say we are not capable of doing these things because world politics is not decided by us. It's decided by the big powers. And that's true. That we can discuss. And that's what we need to change. So if our friends in the United States can impeach President Obama, and if our friends in England can help us put Tony Blair in prison, then we will have a totally different situation where we can discuss these things. And people will not have excuses because we can turn the whole imperial policy. And if somebody can please tell Mrs. Merkel to wake up, that would be very helpful because we are soon in 2013 and Germany is being suffocated. Germany is a technical superpower which is needed by the whole world. It's being suffocated by the current policies, the environmental policies, green policies, and the financial monetarist policies. So Germany's role is very important in this whole situation. But I wanted to focus on some questions of principle because as I have the outline is that we have to define really what is the purpose of existence of the human race. It's not about competition, as modern economics say, or seeking vengeance for old political injustice, or winning land, take it from others. What is really true about human existence is that it's implementing our creative powers to change the universe around us. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a physicist or astronaut to change the universe around you. You could be a farmer, a teacher, or ironsmith who finds joy in applying his creativity and passion to his area of work and make others around them happy. But we do need scientists. We do need astrophysicists. I'm going to take a quote from Kraft Erike, a German space pioneer and thinker. I don't know if we have. He says in his extraterrestrial imperative, says, the fact that neither technology nor reaching beyond Earth is exactly new, but natural growth options exercised before, puts the human reality of our time into perspective. The reality has two anchor points. One, that the chlorophyll, which is responsible for the photosynthesis, that the chlorophyll molecule and the human mind are the only true superpowers on this planet. They must find a way to coexist, and, not being intrinsically incompatible, they can. Two, that humanity does not live as a mankind generally, but is organized as an aggregate of some 140 nations. Now there are more. Most of these nations strive to improve their standard of life or safeguard social standards achieved and extend them to the less advantaged. Without the means to grow, and like it or not, these means include material resources and the ability to process them, general stagnation will create a shrinking water droplet world in which competition for growth turns into a grim struggle for survival. So the purpose of governments and political institutions is to secure an environment within which the individuals can practice their creativity. Our responsibility as citizens and political activists is to kick those elected politicians and governments in the back to make them do their job. We can also give them some useful suggestions about what needs to be done, which we are going to do here. The research of what I'm going to present now is not my work. It's a teamwork which was done by a team from the Executive Intelligence Review, both here in Europe and in the United States. We have Dean Andromedas, Ali Sharaf, Marsha Mary Baker, and also Dennis Small, who made a study on the American deserts, have contributed to this study. And of course, we have to thank Chance McGee and Matthias, who are going to lead us into the animation of these projects. So the perspective from which we're going to act is this geopolitical situation involves conceptualizing what should instead be going on here in this region from the highest level perspective of the strategic defense of Earth, true development of mankind and the universe they inhabit. We will consider this in terms of three main principles. One, upgrading the resources base, in particular water, by organizing what is present available to higher levels. Number two, by making new natural resources and by upgrading the power per unit area. And three, through the productive platform, which لاروش calls it productive platform, which is the infrastructure, agro-industrial sector, social advancements, and the scientific and technological level of the society. These are the same principles which were implied actually originally in Lyndon LaRouche's proposal for the Oasis Plan, which was presented in Baghdad in 1974. These are the same scientific and moral principles. Helga went through this question of the world desert, if we have the map. This is a global desert. Helga mentioned the 13 million square kilometers. I mean, if you compare that area, which is largely depopulated, with the areas where you have the 6 billion human beings on Earth, it's almost larger than where we have the rest of mankind. In countries like in Egypt, 80 million people live on only 4% of the land. 96% of the land is totally empty. So we have people here in Europe and the United States talking about overpopulation of the planet. We are depopulated. We don't have enough people on Earth. We have too much space, but that space is dead. If you look at the relationship between this desert and the Eurasian land bridge, or the world land bridge, which Helga presented, and we have been working on, what we're going to have is this is a huge planetary mission, which has enormous dimensions, and it could only be considered from a planetary perspective, which also involves that we have an agreement among the big powers and the regional powers to work together to achieve a shift from this desert to what we can see could happen later. I would like to start by going directly to the Southwest Asia region with some images of sandstorms. Sandstorms and dust storms are a frequent event in Southwest Asia, especially in the Gulf region, but even extends to Iran, Afghanistan. Now, if you look at satellite images, these are satellite images. That's why we need space technology to determine what is going on Earth. As you look at the, if you can slow it down, if you look at where the sandstorms start from, which go from north to south, these are Arctic jet streams, wind, that come with a high-pressure area and meets a low-pressure area on the Gulf region and the Arabian Sea. So when you look, you figure out that the sandstorms, they start in the border area between Iraq and Syria. That's exactly where the Euphrates ends. And then they sweep down and gather strength. They go over Iraq. You can show the next. This is a close picture where it starts, if you can see. It all starts there in Syria and then goes over Iraq. These are images, I think, these are collected by NASA and European Space Agency satellites. And around March 2011, there was a huge sandstorm which covered the whole area. So you can go to the next. And then the sandstorm, and these storms, they can be, if you can look at pictures of them on the internet when they attack cities. You know, it's like enormous apocalyptic images. I don't have them here, but these, the dust storm can be, sandstorms are up to tens of meters, but the dust storms, they can up to kilometers in the space. And they cover whole countries. And they shut down airports, ports, hospitals, schools, and everything. So then it continues into the Persian Gulf, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. I can go next. And then they take a turn around the highland there in the central Saudi Arabia, and they dump the sand in the empty quarter. That's called the empty quarter. But in this case, the sandstorm was so powerful because you have a mountain range there in Yemen and Oman. So the empty quarter, this is the most dry part of the world desert. So, but in that case, it just continued down over the mountain range into the Gulf of Oman, you know, over Yemen and Oman, and then continues into the sea. You can see also the next images. It goes all the way also into the Arabian Sea. They cover sometimes Pakistan, India. You have other storms which also attack Iran and Afghanistan. So this is a recurring problem. So with the help of the space technology, we can see where the sandstorms originate and where we can start attacking them. So the question is now, for Qatar and Saudi Arabia to stop this, it doesn't help to send jihadists and weapons to Syria and Iraq to kill civilians. That will not help stopping this problem. What you need is a totally different perspective. So that perspective, we can start attacking the desert at different areas and with different technologies. There are plans in these regions that have been there. As I said, these are local plans, but they can give an image. If you look where the area the sandstorms start, which is now a war area, and the land is deteriorating and the desert is expanding, if we have what's the so-called Fertile Crescent. These are also examples. Egypt also attacked by the Hamasin winds. Also the sandstorms, they can reach Europe sometimes. China is also a problem. This is not the Shiite crescent. This is what His Excellency, the ambassador, is saying, the Shia crescent. This is not the Shia crescent. This is called the Fertile Crescent. For obvious reasons, this was an area which was very fertile. There's abundance of water. And some historians say agriculture all started in this region. But the problem is that is not fertile anymore. And it's deteriorating, and the water resources are shrinking. We're going to talk about the Turkish dam projects which have affected the flow of water, but that's not exactly the only reason. It's the destruction of the infrastructure by wars, sanctions, and lack of investments which has created this situation. So this is the idea of where you can attack for example, this sandstorm problem. So there are ideas they are called green belts. What you can do is that you can create green belts. Can I have some example? This is an idea from the Iraqi Agriculture Ministry. Since I was a kid, we used to read about these in school, that we have a national program to protect the country against sandstorms and deserts. It's quite an impressive plan, but it was never realized. I mean, I wasn't born in 1968, and immediately we had a civil war in 73. We had Iran-Iraq war in 80. We had the Gulf War in 1990. We had sanctions. So it's just continuing. Nothing has happened. But there are courageous efforts to build part of this. We have actually an Iranian-Iraqi agreement to build a green belt around the religious cities of Najaf and Karbala. I think we have some image. So what you do is that you plant different types of trees, mostly palm trees, olive trees, eucalyptus trees, tamarind trees. These are trees that are known for resisting heat, resisting salt, and they are water scarce. They can survive in dry climate. So this is the project in Iraq. It's a small project, but this is the kind of, it gives you an image what you need to do. But instead of just a few hundred meters, the green belt should be several kilometers. And then you have rows of these, and you expand, as we saw in the Iraqi plan. It's like you have a shield of green belts, and you move gradually against the desert. We're going to talk about the irrigation techniques and other things later. So the idea of planting a variety of plants is not new. We have, this is from the Egyptian, it's called the grave chamber in one of the Egyptian pyramids. This is a painting on the wall, and you can see the variation of you have palm trees, you have other fruit trees, and you have other plants, and then you have crops, of course, which you need to produce food, wheat, cereals, and so on. So these are old ideas. They have existed there. We have very skillful farmers, but they lack resources. They need the issue with Helga was emphasizing recently that these are not things we can do in 10, 20 years. These things we can do next week. There are people there, farmers and unemployed young people. They can start work immediately next week. And we can start planting trees next week. It's no problem. What is lacking is the policy. We don't have a policy. We have a policy of destruction. We don't have a policy of construction. We can move forward. This is also an interesting image sent by an Egyptian friend of us, an engineer, agricultural engineer. It's just the same thing. The palm trees, what is special about them is that they can work as a windshield, but they also can stabilize the soil. But what they do also is that they can create shadow for other types of trees. He sent me a study he did on olive trees. Olive trees, if they are planted alone under the sun, their productivity will be diminished by about 50% because the heat will kill a lot of in the kernel of the olives. But if you plant it in a shadow of a plant, their productivity will increase. It's a cooler area. But there's an interesting reference to this we have from the Holy Quran, where there's a story of two men, and there's a conflict within the two men. But the Quran says, it's in the Surah of the Cave, and it says, "And present to them an example of two men. We granted to one of them 2 gardens of grapevines, and we bordered them with palm trees and placed between them fields of crops. Each of the 2 gardens produced its fruit and did not fall short thereof in anything. And we caused to gush forth within them a river." So this is exactly what we got. This is the techniques, agricultural techniques according to the Quran. But what we're going to do is we're going to remove one thing. In the modern techniques, we cannot have open canals nowadays because most of the water would evaporate. We have to cover all the water streams. We're going to have, I will just describe it, but the Quran may excuse us that we remove that part because we need the modern technique and adjust to today's situation. Yeah, these are palm trees, and they are very productive, of course. You all have eaten dates and so on. So these are not only to protect against dust, but these are a source of food and energy for the population. There are different ways of stopping the desert. This is called dissing. It's used a lot in China, where you spread. It's very labor intensive. That's the problem. You create these cross sections of dry trees or reeds, and then you try to stop the advancement of the desert, and then you plant in these areas. But the problem is that what you need to do is you have to bring the water infrastructure first. So you can't dig the water infrastructure later. You have to do it before starting this. But this just gives you an idea. You can go further. This is from Libya in 1950s. It's the same concept. But this is in the China Taklamakan desert highway. They tried to protect the road from the sand. The sand moves the whole time. It's like, snow in the Arctic regions. So they try. They pump water from the underground. It's salty water, but they have planted types of plants that resist salt. So that's also a question for a scientific development. You have to develop new types of plants who can resist salt water, or they can resist heat. So this is also at technological level. So this is one idea, but unless you deal with this in a larger context, you cannot limit the desert. But these are images to, show what is being done, but it needs to be generalized. I don't know if we have any more. Yeah, so any reasonable person would ask first, after saying all these nice things, so where would the water come from? Which is a good question. So what we are defining in our report is that there are three sources of water which are available or can be available. First, you can transfer water from areas which are rich with water to these water-poor areas by so-called water diversion system. Helga went through some of these, the Ob, Irtish, Aral Sea. You have also in the another one which goes to the east of the Ural Mountains. It's called the Pechora, Kama, Volga Canal. Also, there are these rivers go and, like the Nawapa project, they end up in the Arctic Sea. So the idea is to stop them from going to the Arctic Sea and divert part of the water and reverse the movement of the water to rivers that flow in the opposite direction. So Helga went through these, so I'm not going to go through that.